My name is Camilla. I'm 34 years old, and for 6 long years I lived with a narcissist who cheated on me and still managed to convince me it was my fault. This is my narcissist true story. It isn't easy to confess, because every word brings back a weight in my chest. Every memory feels like reopening wounds that never really healed. But I need to say it, because silence was the chain that kept me locked in my invisible prison for too long. From the very beginning, there were signs. Small, almost invisible at first. He didn't start with betrayal. He started with tiny cuts that I dismissed as nothing. The first violences were invisible, but they were there. The way he distorted my words. The way he made me feel foolish for speaking. If I shared an opinion, he would smirk and say, "That's not what you meant, Camilla. Don't twist things." If I expressed joy, he accused me of exaggerating. If I expressed sadness, he called me dramatic. Slowly, I began to question whether my feelings had any value at all. The criticisms were subtle at first. He would look at my clothes and say, "You're not really going to wear that, are you?" Or, when I laughed too loudly, he'd whisper in my ear, "Tone it down. You're embarrassing yourself." It wasn't shouting. It wasn't obvious abuse, but it was control. A quiet, poisonous drip of narcissist manipulation designed to shrink me piece by piece. And I let it happen, because I thought love meant compromise. Silence became another weapon. There were days when he wouldn't speak to me at all. I would ask what was wrong, and he would stare through me as if I didn't exist. Hours, sometimes days, of cold distance that left me begging for scraps of attention. I thought if I changed myself, if I did everything perfectly, he would stop withdrawing. That's what living with a narcissist does. It convinces you that their silence is your punishment. Their control is your responsibility. The first time I caught him in a lie was over something small. He said he was working late, but a friend mentioned seeing him at a bar. When I asked, he laughed. "You're crazy, Camilla. Always looking for problems where there are none." The way he said it, so calm, so confident, made me doubt my own ears. That's when the gaslighting began to weave its threads around me. But the worst was still to come, because it wasn't just lies about late nights. It was betrayal. It was infidelity. It was his body with another woman while I was at home waiting for him. And yet somehow he twisted it all until I believed I was the one to blame. He told me, "If you were more exciting, if you weren't so needy, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere." That sentence has burned itself into my bones. He cheated on me, and then he told me it was my fault. That is the cruelty of narcissist control. The abuser destroys you, then makes you believe you drove him to it. What breaks me when I look back is how easily I accepted his words. I didn't scream. I didn't leave. I apologized. I apologized for not being enough. That is what a toxic relationship does to you. It convinces you to carry the weight of someone else's betrayal on your own back. Every time I caught him, there was always an excuse. Always a reason why I was to blame. If I found messages, he said, "You pushed me away, Camilla." If I smelled perfume, that wasn't mine. He said, "If you took better care of yourself, maybe I wouldn't notice other women." He turned his cheating into my shame, and I swallowed it, because I was already broken by years of his emotional abuse. This is how the prison was built. First with criticism, then with silence, then with lies, and finally with betrayal. By the time I realized I was trapped, I no longer trusted my own reality. I was living a gaslighting story where every truth was twisted, every lie was justified, and every wound was somehow my fault. That's the essence of narcissist abuse. You don't just lose your partner, you lose yourself. And yet, I stayed. For 6 years, I stayed. Because the shame of admitting the truth felt heavier than the pain of living it. Because he convinced me I deserved it. Because toxic love is addictive. It hurts. But it also makes you crave the moments when it doesn't. This is my narcissist confession. He cheated on me and told me I was to blame. He betrayed me and made me apologize for his betrayal. And for too long, I believed him. The cheating was only the surface wound. What destroyed me deeper than betrayal was the way he made me doubt my own mind. This is where the gaslighting became unbearable. Living with a narcissist is not just about enduring lies. It's about losing trust in your own memory, your own perception, your own reality. There was one night I remember clearly. I had found a message on his phone, a woman sending him a picture. My hands shook as I confronted him. I thought I finally had proof that couldn't be denied. But instead of guilt, he gave me a cold smile. "You're imagining things, Camilla. That's not what you think it is." I stood there holding his phone, staring at the screen, but his calmness made me doubt my own eyes. He leaned closer and whispered, "You always twist things. That's why we fight, because of your paranoia." And in that moment, I felt insane. That was his gift, making me question what was right in front of me. If I said he was late, he told me I misread the clock. If I reminded him of something he had promised, he told me I dreamed it. "You're always confused, Camilla." I never said that. He would erase whole conversations with a single sentence, and I would stand frozen, wondering if maybe I had misunderstood. That's how gaslighting works. It makes you your own enemy. He started using my past against me. He knew I had been insecure in previous relationships, so he weaponized it. "You've always been like this. You push people away with your jealousy. I'm the one who's patient enough to stay with you." I swallowed those words like poison, believing he was the strong one, the tolerant one, and I was the unstable one. That is the heart of narcissist manipulation. They betray you, and then convince you that you should be grateful they haven't left. Sometimes he didn't even deny cheating. Sometimes he would look me straight in the eye and say, "So what if I did? Maybe if you were better, I wouldn't need anyone else." The cruelty wasn't just in the act, but in the way he twisted it into a reflection of my flaws. I wasn't the victim. He made me believe I was the cause. That's why this emotional abuse story still haunts me, because I lived years blaming myself for his betrayal. There were nights when I stayed awake, replaying every moment, every word, trying to understand where I had failed. I would stare at the ceiling while he slept peacefully beside me, asking myself if maybe I had been too cold, too emotional, too distant. I made lists in my head of all the ways I needed to improve to keep him from straying again. I thought if I could just fix myself, he would stop. That's how deeply I was trapped by a narcissist. I believed the problem was me. He had a way of turning every confrontation into an attack on me. If I cried, he said, "There you go again, playing the victim." If I stayed quiet, he accused me of being passive-aggressive. If I shouted, he called me crazy. No matter how I reacted, he found a way to make me the villain. I learned there was no right answer, no safe way to speak, no version of myself that wouldn't be wrong. That is the suffocating loop of narcissist control. One of the cruelest tricks he played was when I tried to leave. I packed my things once, desperate to escape. But when he saw me with the suitcase, he didn't panic. He laughed. "Go ahead, Camilla, but you'll come crawling back. No one else will want you after I've put up with all your madness." I froze. The confidence in his voice was terrifying, and a part of me believed him. That's how psychological abuse chains you, not with threats of violence, but with the conviction that you are unlovable. He cheated, and yet he convinced me that I was the one who was broken. He betrayed me, and yet he made me apologize. He humiliated me, and still, I begged him to stay. That is the power of gaslighting. It doesn't just confuse you, it rewires your brain until you become your own jailer. Even my body started to betray me. I lost weight without meaning to. My hands shook constantly. My skin broke out. But when I told him I felt sick, he said, "It's all in your head. You're fine. Stop looking for attention." So I doubted even my physical pain. I stopped trusting my reflection in the mirror. The worst part was the silence that followed the betrayals. After every fight, after every confession twisted back onto me, he would disappear into his phone, or leave the house, or turn his back in bed. And I would beg. I would plead for him to talk, to forgive me, to not leave. I didn't realize then that I was apologizing for his sins. That's the essence of toxic love. It makes you crave forgiveness from the one who wounded you. Gaslighting was not just a tool he used. It was the entire foundation of our relationship. He made me believe lies. He erased truths. He twisted betrayals into my guilt. And I stayed, because by then, I couldn't tell what was real anymore. This is my narcissist confession. He cheated on me, and through his manipulation, I came to believe it was my fault. I lived inside a fog of lies and betrayal so thick that I lost myself completely. And even now, years later, I sometimes still wonder if maybe he was right. That is the deepest scar of narcissist abuse, when the doubt remains long after the abuser is gone. The escalation came slowly, but it came with a force that shattered every last piece of me. The cheating never stopped. The manipulation only deepened. But now, It wasn't just hidden affairs or quiet gaslighting. It was humiliation, public cruelty, isolation that made me feel like I was living in a cage with invisible walls. There was a dinner with his friends I will never forget. I dressed carefully that night, putting on a black dress that made me feel at least a little confident. For a brief moment, I wanted to feel like a woman again, not just a shadow in the corner of his life. But as soon as we sat down, he looked at me across the table and said in front of everyone, "Don't stare at her too long, guys. She looks good tonight, but trust me, it doesn't last." Laughter erupted, and my stomach dropped. My cheeks burned with shame. It wasn't a joke. It was his way of showing power. That is what living with a narcissist means. Being humiliated not only in private, but in front of witnesses. Forced to smile through the pain so no one suspects the truth. The betrayals became almost casual. I stopped searching his phone because I already knew what I would find. Messages, late-night calls, lies stacked on lies. Once I found a hotel receipt in his car. When I asked, he sneered, "You think you're a detective? If you spent half the effort making me happy that you spend spying on me, maybe I wouldn't need other women." My heart broke, but my mouth only whispered, "I'm sorry." Sorry for what? Sorry for not being enough. That's the cruel paradox of toxic love. You apologize for being wounded. You beg forgiveness for being betrayed. On holidays, when couples should feel close, he found new ways to crush me. On Valentine's Day, I bought him a small gift, wrapped with care. When I handed it to him, he didn't even look at it. He said, "Do you think this cheap thing makes up for all your nagging? You ruin everything." I went into the bathroom and cried silently, holding the wrapping paper in my lap like a child. My birthday was worse. I woke up hopeful, praying that maybe he would be kind just once. Instead, he looked at me coldly and said, "Why should I celebrate you? What have you done worth celebrating?" Those words felt like knives. That day, instead of joy, I carried humiliation as my only gift. The isolation deepened as his abuse escalated. At first, he discouraged me from seeing friends. Later, he outright forbade it. They're bad influences. They just want to fill your head with nonsense. If I insisted, we would fight for hours until I gave up. Eventually, the invitations stopped coming. My friends got tired of my excuses. My family grew distant because every time I tried to visit, he would start a war. I became completely alone, locked in a world where he was my only point of contact, my only voice, my only source of love and cruelty. That is narcissist isolation. Slow, suffocating, complete. The verbal assaults became sharper, like daggers aimed at my weakest spots. "You're pathetic. You're nothing without me. No one would ever want you." Each phrase was another chain around me. I didn't fight back anymore. I absorbed them, let them carve themselves into my skin. I started to believe them, to repeat them in my own mind when I looked in the mirror. That's the cruel success of narcissist abuse. When you no longer need the abuser to tear you down, because you've learned to do it yourself. Public humiliation became his favorite weapon. At a family gathering, I made a small comment about how tired I was from work. He cut me off and said loudly, "Tired? She doesn't even do real work. She just complains." Everyone laughed uncomfortably, and I wanted to vanish. Later, in the car, when I told him how much it hurt, he looked at me coldly and said, "If you don't want me to say it, then stop being pathetic." The cheating reached new levels of cruelty. One night, he didn't come home until dawn. I sat waiting, my stomach in knots. When he finally arrived, his shirt reeked of perfume. I confronted him, and for the first time, he didn't deny it. He leaned down, inches from my face, and said, "Yes, I was with her. And do you know why? Because she makes me feel alive. You don't." My knees gave out. I fell to the floor, sobbing, while he stepped over me as if I were nothing more than dirt in his path. What destroyed me the most was not just the betrayal, but the way he made me complicit in it. He would blame me, accuse me, convince me that his infidelity was proof of my inadequacy. He said, "Men don't cheat if they're happy. Think about that, Camilla." And I did. I thought about it for days, weeks, months, blaming myself for not being enough, for not keeping him satisfied, for not being lovable. That's the endless loop of narcissist manipulation. They destroy you, and then convince you that you handed them the weapon. By the time the abuse escalated to its peak, I wasn't even fighting anymore. I was just enduring, smiling when I needed to smile, staying quiet when silence was safer, bending myself into smaller and smaller shapes until I barely existed at all. My life was no longer mine. It belonged to him, to his moods, his betrayals, his cruel games. And yet, I stayed, because leaving felt impossible, because he had convinced me that freedom wasn't an option, because I was already too broken to imagine escape. That was the escalation. Humiliation, betrayal, isolation, complete destruction. And still, I told myself this was love. People often wonder why women like me stay. Why not just pack a bag and leave? Why endure 6 years of lies, humiliation, and betrayal? The truth is painful. I stayed because I was trapped in an invisible prison, built not from walls or locks, but from fear, shame, and a desperate hope that refused to die. Fear was the strongest chain. He convinced me I couldn't survive without him. No one else will ever want you, Camilla. You're lucky I put up with you. Those words weren't just insults. They became beliefs I carried inside me. Every time I thought of leaving, those phrases echoed in my head, paralyzing me. Fear of being alone, fear of proving him right, fear of stepping into a world where I no longer knew who I was. That fear kept me frozen. Shame was another weapon. To the outside world, he was charming, funny, admired. Everyone loved him. If I told anyone what really happened behind closed doors, I was sure they wouldn't believe me. Or worse, they'd pity me. I didn't want to be seen as weak, as the woman who stayed with a man who cheated on her and blamed her for it. So I kept quiet. Silence became part of my prison. Isolation sealed it. By the time the abuse reached its peak, I had no friends left. My family was distant, tired of my excuses. He had successfully cut me off from every support system. When I imagined leaving, I realized I had nowhere to go, no one to call, no one to hold me. The world outside felt colder than the prison I already knew. That's how narcissist isolation works. It makes you believe your abuser is your only lifeline. And then there was hope, the cruelest chain of all. Because despite everything, I still believed he could change. On rare occasions, after breaking me down, he would hold me and whisper, "I love you, Camilla. Don't give up on me. You're the only one who really understands me." And I believed him. I clung to those crumbs of tenderness like a starving woman clings to bread. Toxic love convinces you that pain is temporary, but love is eternal. I told myself if I just endured a little longer, if I just proved my devotion, he would finally see my worth and stop hurting me. I also stayed because I thought I deserved it. After years of gaslighting and manipulation, I believed I was the problem. He cheated on me, but I thought I had driven him to it. He humiliated me, but I thought I provoked him. He isolated me, but I thought it was my fault for being too needy. When you live with a narcissist long enough, their voice becomes your voice. You stop fighting because you no longer know the difference between truth and lies. There were moments when I tried to leave. Once I packed my suitcase and stood at the door, my heart racing, but he caught me. He didn't beg. He didn't cry. He smirked and said, "Go ahead, but you'll crawl back, and when you do, I won't take you back." Think about that. His confidence was terrifying. I dropped the suitcase. I stayed. Not because I loved him in that moment, but because I was terrified of proving him right, that I was nothing without him. Money was another chain. He controlled our finances. If I needed something, I had to ask. He made sure I felt like a child dependent on his approval. Without me, you'd be nothing. You can't even take care of yourself. I had supported myself before I met him, but somehow I forgot that. His control over money wasn't just practical. It was psychological. It made me believe I was incapable of surviving on my own. The nights were the hardest. Lying next to him, my back turned, holding in silent tears, I would imagine a different life. A life where I was free, where love didn't feel like punishment. But then he would stir, place a hand on me and whisper, "Don't ever leave me." And my fantasy would shatter. I told myself he needed me. I told myself I couldn't abandon him. I told myself endurance was love. That's the cruelest part of narcissist abuse. It convinces you that staying in pain is proof of loyalty. Even my body betrayed me. I stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped caring for myself. My reflection in the mirror became a stranger. Hollow eyes, pale skin, a woman fading away. But when I mentioned it, he told me, "That's what happens when you obsess over nothing. Stop making yourself the victim." And I believed him. I believed my collapse was just another sign of weakness. The invisible prison was built from fear, shame, isolation, dependence, and hope. A fortress with no doors, no keys, just endless chains inside my own mind. And for 6 years, I lived inside it, telling myself this was love, telling myself I had no choice, telling myself I deserved no better. I stayed because I didn't know how to leave, and that perhaps is the most painful truth of all. He cheated on me, and he made me believe it was my fault. That sentence alone still makes my chest tighten, because even after years of distance, the echo of his voice still lingers inside me. Living with a narcissist wasn't just about surviving his betrayals. It was about surviving myself, the version of me he created, the broken woman who believed she deserved nothing better. For 6 years, I was erased piece by piece, every insult carved into me, every lie rewrote my reality, every betrayal convinced me I was worthless. He didn't need to keep me chained. I chained myself with the words he repeated until they became my truth. You're nothing without me. No one else will want you. Men don't cheat if they're happy. You should think about that. These phrases became the bars of my invisible prison. Even now, I sometimes wake up at night and wonder if maybe he was right. That's the cruelest legacy of narcissist abuse. It outlives the relationship. It crawls into your mind and builds a home there. You start doubting even after the abuser is gone. That's the trauma I carry, the endless questioning of my own worth. I think of the woman I used to be before him, full of laughter, hope, and dreams. And then I think of the woman I became, hollow-eyed, silenced, begging for crumbs of love from the very man who destroyed me. That contrast haunts me. I wonder how I let it happen. I wonder how I stayed so long. And then I remember, because he made me believe I had no choice. He cheated on me and blamed me for his cheating. He humiliated me in public and told me I provoked it. He isolated me and said it was for my own good. He broke me and convinced me I was broken long before him. That is what narcissist control looks like. That is what toxic love feels like. That is what being trapped by a narcissist means. Not chains, not bruises, but a soul crushed under the weight of lies and manipulation. Sometimes, I think of the exact moment I realized I couldn't survive it anymore. It wasn't during one of the big betrayals. It wasn't the perfume on his shirt, or the hotel receipt. It was something small. He came home one night, smelling of alcohol, and another woman's perfume. I asked nothing. I didn't even cry. I just sat there in silence, staring at the floor, and in that silence I realized I had nothing left inside me to fight with. I wasn't living anymore. I was only existing. That was the night I knew something had to break, even if it was me. I wish I could say leaving gave me freedom. I wish I could say the moment I walked away, I felt whole again. But the truth is, leaving didn't erase the scars. The invisible prison doesn't open just because the door is unlocked. The walls follow you. The voices echo. The doubt lingers. It takes time to even remember what freedom feels like. But somewhere deep inside me, beneath the shame and the fear, there is a whisper. A fragile, trembling whisper that says, "This wasn't your fault, Camilla." That whisper is what I cling to now. It's not strength yet, not healing, not liberation, but it's something. It's a seed of possibility. He made me doubt my worth. He made me doubt my memory. He made me doubt my reality. But I don't want to keep doubting forever. I want to believe that there is life beyond this pain, that there is love that doesn't destroy, that there is a version of me that can laugh without fear again. For now, I carry both truths, the weight of trauma and the spark of hope. That is my narcissist confession. That is my emotional abuse story. He cheated on me and said it was my fault. And for years I believed him. But today, even if my voice trembles, I say the words out loud. It wasn't my fault. And maybe, just maybe, that is the first step toward freedom.